Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Nick Watts, and welcome to another episode of College Football Under Review, a show made by a football fan for football fans everywhere. Now, in today's episode, we're going over the SEC's recent stir in the airwaves after their spring meetings turned more into a rant on their college football supremacy and their complaints within the system and where they fit into it. We're also going over some of the best Week 1 games, and we'll provide insight on who's a contender or pretender this upcoming season. And lastly, I'll be giving updates on the upcoming EA College Football video game, as well as my thoughts on the previous iteration of the game as well. And we can't forget, I'm always going to get something off my chest. All this and more as we take college football under review. So these SEC meetings happened in Destin earlier this week and have been more of a think tank for the conference and a glimpse into media days and what's going to happen there and what they're going to talk about more than just a simple meeting for the conference and going over rules and regulations, even though some of that did happen, and we'll get into that later. And the first topic to really go over from the SEC spring meetings are the multiple opinions that coaches and athletic directors have had about the upcoming debate for the college football playoff format in 2026. So the college football playoff deadline and the committee really has to make a decision on this playoff format, and that's supposed to be believed around December 1st. And the SEC administrators want a resolution on their scheduling model by week 1 of the upcoming football season to make sure that they have the best in-conference schedule for their, team's chances to be in the playoffs. And this is really they're going over this, and they really want the playoff committee to figure this out earlier than later so that they can kind of stack the deck and figure out whether they want to make sure wins and losses are more important or figure out if strength of schedule is more important for these upcoming playoffs. And we're going to continue into going into these two different concepts that have kind of morphed over the last couple weeks. So the discussion for what I like to call, and a lot of people are calling, the 4-4-2-2-1 and 3 kind of playoff format is really what the SEC and SEC athletic directors want. So the 4-4-2-2-1-3 kind of goes as 4 SEC, 4 Big 10, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, and 1 group of 5. And those are all conference automatic qualifiers. And then you're going to have 3 at-large bids for that final category. And the other one is the 5-11 format. You're going to have 1 automatic bid for each of the conferences, the Power 4 and the Group of 5. And then you're going to have the top 11 at-large teams. And it seems like the majority of the SEC coaches, not athletic directors, the athletic directors want the other one, as well as Greg Sankey. But the ACC and Big 12 also want this for obvious reasons, so that they don't feel like they're being cast aside. And for me personally, this is the preferred format, I think, as we get all the conferences represented with each one, which it is a national playoff. And I think we should at least have representation in each conference at the minimum. That is needed to be a national championship and national playoff. And I think the field would be filled with the best remaining teams no matter how that happens. I do think we should have a precedent of wins and losses slightly over strength of schedule. I think strength of schedule is a great motive for ties. Like if two teams are 10-2 and they are right outside the playoff discussion, then the one with the higher strength of schedule should get in for that 10-2. I mean, it just makes more sense in my opinion. And I think wins and losses should still be held in higher regard than strength of schedule. Obviously, strength of schedule does mean something, but it completely means something different at the beginning of the season than how the teams that they played during the season ended up doing, because you can never predict athletes in any sport and what's going to happen. And really, the athletic directors want these 4 automatic qualifiers for the SEC, and a few coaches want that as well. But I believe the overwhelming majority of the coaches within the conference have really sided, or at least are leaning towards the 5-11 model in the end. And I'm going to explain why. They have these juxtaposition views against each other. And I believe one wants the ability to have the best chance to put their product out on the field, and the other wants to ensure they have a better chance to make money and keep their contracts going. I think both apply to each athletic directors and coaches within the sport, but in the end, the schools want security and so do the coaches. But I believe the 2 models and their discussion really represent how skewed the sport has become and how the future looks very uncertain. The athletic directors and these programs, they want to make money. They are in the business of making money. These coaches are also in the business of making money, but they will make more money and have better job security in that 5-11 model because they are going to have a better chance of getting in the playoff. And I still believe the bottom tier coaches want that in the SEC for the 5-11 format, because if it really comes down to conference play and they're just out of luck and they lost all their conference games but won everything else and are just outside the playoff, it's going to be really tough for them to get in those 3 at-large bids for the 4-4-2-2-1-3 model. And we had some other quotes kind of on this and the playoff format and how they really want to go about this. Greg Sankey stated, "It's clear that not losing becomes in many ways more important than beating the University of Georgia, which 2 of our teams that were left out did." He's talking about Alabama, obviously, and he's talking about Ole Miss. He said, in reference to the belief that strength of schedule was not taken into consideration when choosing last year's playoff field. Now, personally, as an Alabama fan, we were gypped into not getting into the playoff. But that's not due to the fact that the committee kicked us out. It was because we kicked ourselves out. Same thing with Ole Miss as well. You had 3 losses. The committee should have put SMU in. And I know as a Bama fan, it's going against everything I go for as an Alabama fan. But it was right to put SMU in. I'm going to be the bigger person. They had done so well their entire season just to lose on a last-second field goal against Clemson in the ACC championship game. And it would have set a dangerous precedent moving forward, and all the other conferences would have been very upset. Another quote was, "A committee is not ideal to choose a postseason." And this was Florida Athletics Director Scott Strickland, and he was on the playoff selection committee from 2018 through 2021. Now, obviously, this quote's going to have some weight since he was inside the committee and kind of looked at it, but I think now that he's out of it, he doesn't have the control that he really wants, but he has seen what goes into the selection process and those discussions. This is, I think the committee in some way is both ideal and both not. I really did like the BCS format. It really put all the BS to the side, looked at numbers and analytics, even though there were a couple controversies with how the top 2 teams shaped up a couple of years later down the stretch, which is why I believe we moved to the 4-team playoff format. But I think we need a committee to really sit down and look at some of these outside factors that a computer cannot look at and justify. If there was a combination of that, I think that would look good. But now that the committee has all the control right now, at least it seems like they have all the control, I don't think they are going to want to give up power. That's just human nature. And the model with 4 automatic qualifiers would also allow the SEC to pursue 2 playoff play-in games during those championship weekends in early December, which would increase broadcast inventory for ESPN and fatten the SEC's pocketbooks. And that is, something that the conference is always going to want, and these programs, more money to their school. I mean, no one's going to argue against that. But the coaches, however, are mixed on that prospect as well and believe the College Football Playoff Committee punishes teams for losing more than winning. And with that being said, the playoff format still up in the air puts a lot of pressure on the SEC to determine and commit to what regular season format they're going to go with, as they want to determine and finalize the option that gives them the most favor, in my opinion, to stack the playoffs. And you may say, oh, the SEC would never stack the playoffs. I mean, I'm just going to say this. Texas had one of the easiest SEC schedules, and it was their first year in, and they are a big market. I think the SEC, Greg Sankey kind of knew what they were doing, almost ensuring them that they would make the SEC championship and give them a good leg up into getting in that playoff. But that's just me. That's an opinion. And I'm going to continue on. The 8 SEC league schedule right now is based on 8 conference games, or the 9 conference game schedule will most likely be enacted, which was discussed, determined based off the 2026 playoff format. Now, that may have sounded a little confusing, and I'm going to restate that again. So right now, the SEC currently has a 8 in-conference schedule for all the SEC teams. And I think based on whether or not the playoff format is the 4 automatic qualifier, they will move to 9. If it goes to the 5-11 route, they're going to keep it at 8 because the committee is going to look at wins and losses over strength of schedule. And the Texas A&M athletics director, Trev Alberts, said on Tuesday, I personally, if we get where we can with the playoff selection, I think 9 SEC games make sense, but it doesn't make sense if we're not guaranteed playoff spots. Now, this is him saying again, why should we be going up against the best teams, at least in their eyes, in college football, in the best conference, when we can get another win with an out-of-conference opponent? And that's a good argument, and it really puts pressure on the SEC to predict whether or not they're going to go to 9 or they're going to move to, or at least keep it at 8. And right now, the SEC requires only a majority of votes to pass a resolution in conference scheduling, but more coaches have voiced concerns about the increasing games in light of the college football playoff, leaving out 3-loss Alabama and South Carolina in the first iteration of the 12-team playoff. Just another reason why they are fearful that going to a 9 interconference season schedule could just hurt their chances of getting in, as they're fearful that some of these top-tier teams one week might lose to a mid-tier team, and there goes another SEC team out of the playoff race. And this discussion is getting very dangerous, in my opinion, because I think we're starting to see these conferences stack the deck to make sure the cards are in their favor with a schedule to make more of their teams guaranteed into the playoffs, if that is with a 5-11 format. It's no shock that the SEC thinks that they are the dominant force in college football, and they are going to make sure, whether it's imposing their will for the playoff format or stacking the deck schedule-wise to make sure that they have the most teams in the playoff and claim that they are the top dog in college football, they're going to do whatever it takes. And Greg Sankey, as a lot of people out of the conference and other conferences probably don't like him, you can't argue he is a professional and business genius that is going to make sure that his conference is looked after. A lot of people want to say that he probably was the reason that conference realignment happened, but you can't be mad at someone that has Oklahoma and Texas coming up to him and saying, hey, we want to join your conference. What are you going to do? Say no, because they're just going to go to another conference and you're going to look like an idiot. So I think Greg Sankey is in a tough spot, but he definitely has a lot of cards still not on the table and hasn't shown everything and shown his full hand. But I think he is a smart individual that is going to make sure that the SEC is looked after. And while they can argue internally about this preferred format of the playoffs, there's still a lot of frustration they expressed about things in college football that are out of their control. This was a lot of coaches griping and complaining. And some of these coaches, like Kirby Smart, have called for portal eligibility to be reduced from 2 windows, aka the winter and spring window, to only be reduced to 1, so that the number of overall transfer portal days available go from December 9th. Sorry, I misspoke there. He just wants to reduce the overall number of transfer portal days. I think a lot of coaches want this. Sorry, I had a brain fart there. Currently, the portal period runs from December 9th to the 28th, and after spring training and spring games from April 16th to April 25th. So this December period, I think, is very troublesome and especially irksome to some coaches that really have to balance their early signing day period, and the transfer portal doesn't make that easier when these playoff teams are almost at a disadvantage because they have to prepare for the postseason and they can't put all their time into recruiting. So I definitely understand and agree that the postseason needs to finish before that transfer portal happens. It's completely unfair that these college teams and programs that make it to the playoff are already behind in their recruiting strategy for the next season. It completely jeopardizes their entire playoff race. If you're knocked out at the beginning, you just wasted a week of recruiting. If you made it all the way to the national championship and lost, like Notre Dame, you lost out on 4 weeks of recruiting. It definitely needs to be fixed, and I think Kirby Smart, for once, as arrogant as he can be, he finally answered and just came out and said what everyone else is thinking, but he's going to think that he has more weight since he probably is the best college football coach right now. Another big argument that the SEC was very frustrated in was their limitations in their voting power and being represented in the college football landscape. So currently the Power 4 conferences are pushing for a weighted vote that would give them 65% of the power on rulemaking committees. Even that amount, which would give the Power 4 conferences significantly more power than they have now, still comes with a risk. One source said that there are concerns that all it takes is one conference not voting with the others or even ceasing to exist altogether if there's further realignment and consolidation. So to prevent approval for these solutions. And Sankey said Monday that he'd like to see that weighted vote go up to at least 68% to avoid some of those issues. And this was reported by CBS Sports. Along with this, multiple Big Ten and SEC sources have expressed extreme frustration and being unable to push through changes because the smaller conferences won't support it. And I definitely understand their frustration. They have bigger markets. They have more teams in their conferences. They're getting more views. They are having more marquee matchups. And so it definitely makes sense that they are genuinely frustrated. And we could see a shift in this because I think this is justified, that they do kind of make up more of the college football market and the money that they put into it and the money that all these programs make off of the Power Four conferences. Now, one thing that I'm going to put out there is, let's just look at how the U.S. government runs things. How about we have a mixture of both? How about all conferences gain one vote, and every year 11 other votes are distributed to the conferences based on the teams in the playoff that year? I think this makes sense. It still gives the power or group of five conferences a vote. And if they can get another team in there, great, you get a second vote. But it kind of bases it off performance. That's just an idea I've put out there. I doubt anyone out there is going to listen to that actually has voting power and say, wow, this college football under review guy, he's kind of got it going on. He knows something. But that's just me, and that's just a little suggestion I have thrown out there. Why don't we have a mixture of both? We got a Senate. We got a House of Representatives. It's worked for this long for one of the greatest nations ever with one of the greatest sports ever, college football. So why not give it a try? And let's look at some other, facts from these meetings that came out, because there were a couple small things that actually did make sense, a couple of other comments that were made by coaches. And one of the big ones was, in my opinion, field rushes. And so the fact is that the field rush fines have been increased to a flat $500,000 for every home team, but the fine can be waived if the visiting team and game officials are able to return safely to the locker rooms before the fans do storm the field. So it used to be an incremental $100,000 to $250,000 to $500,000, and I think they kind of went at this and put it at a flat $500,000 because there have been a lot of field rushes the last 3 years in college football, but not only college football as a whole, the SEC. There has been a lot of upsets recently, and it's no shock that this has seemingly become more frequent. In my opinion, the real question is this for safety for the players and officials, or to save face for the SEC and make them look more professional? Overall, I think a flat rate is better. I think $500,000 is a little steep, but it's hard to stop a mob of fans, when they've probably been, college students have probably been drinking and they have not seen their team beat someone like Alabama for 15 years and Tennessee storm the field because they haven't been able to do that in 15 years. I personally think it's just Greg Sankey trying to make it look more professional so that in arguments later down, they can say, hey, we're the more professional ones. We don't storm the field anymore. We have class. We're the SEC. We have class. And the last thing I really want to bring up that was kind of interesting, considering that Steve Sarkisian is coming into a great season with a great team. He came out and claimed that there will never be another undefeated national champion due to the current format of the football schedule and state of the NIL and transfer portal. While it definitely hasn't been easy to win a national championship in recent years, Michigan went undefeated just 2 years ago. Yes, that was still in the 4-team playoff, but still, that was 2 years ago with the transfer portal and everything. And with that being said, is Sark bringing up a good point, or is he just saving himself from ridicule if Arch Manning comes up short and he doesn't go undefeated this season? I think it's just him trying to reduce everyone's expectations for college football as a whole. I don't think his fan base is after him. There's no reason he should be saying this in fear for his job. But I definitely think it's something that is going to be revered more in the future if one of these teams are able to go undefeated. Oregon last season, they were undefeated in the entire regular season, and they lost in the playoffs. It showed that it's extremely difficult. And as Sark is not fearful for his job, or I don't think Arch Manning is going to come up short, I think he's just saying what's on his mind, and that's what happened this entire SEC meetings. It was a think tank, not a meeting. And outside of that, I will just say it was funny to see Paul Feinbaum and Lane Kiffin go at it again, and Kirby Smart got a little bit in there too. So if you haven't seen that, you should definitely look at another awkward exchange between Lane Kiffin and Paul Feinbaum. It was very funny. All right. So next on the docket, while the SEC continues to put content out there for all of us, and we have now wrapped up all the SEC meetings recap from earlier this week, we can't disregard that there are some great games that are going to lead us into the 2025 college football season. I definitely believe it would be very premature of me to claim and predict the top games for the rest of the season and the year, because I think there is this fog of war in the first 4 weeks of every college football season that sets team standards and shows us truly whether or not if they have a foundation to be a championship contender. And that's why I'm only going over these week 1 games because, I don't know if no one thought Arizona State was going to be a lick of good at anything coming down the stretch. And so that Arizona State BYU matchup ended up becoming one of the best games of the season. No one would have predicted that at the beginning of the season. So that's why I'm just going over these week 1 games as we near closer to the season. So with these week 1 games, I will provide some storylines for the beginning of the season, and these teams will set a precedent on their season moving forward with these week 1 games and the programs that have some of the featured matches. Now, with the expansion of the playoffs, these week 1 games, in my opinion, aren't as important as they used to be, but it could be the beginning and show us whether or not that there is going to be this tipping point near the end of the season if they are left out of the playoff or not, based off of these week 1 performances against these top teams, or at least the teams that are looking like they are going to be the contenders for the playoff. Now, for these week 1 games, I'm going to try and do my best Vern Lundquist cadence. If you are an SEC viewer, I can't lie, CBS and Vern Lundquist was one of the most iconic Saturday events ever, and he will forever be missed, in my opinion. And I'm going to present these week 1 matchups to you in some entertaining fashion, and I've kind of put together a couple words about each game that we're going to go over, and I'm going to give you the dates and times of these games on the screen. And all I can say is if you aren't excited for college football in these week 1 matches, as I give these previews, well, I don't know what's going to excite you. So we've got our week 1 season statements, but we got a caveat. The first game is week 0. Week 0, we're talking about week 1. No, we're talking about college football. And week 0 is, in my opinion, technically week 1 as well. It just happens a week before. So, first up, we've got August 23rd, Kansas State is at Iowa State. This is a key conference matchup. This game features two of the best programs in this conference of recent years, and one could end up in the conference championship game with a win as two Big 12 teams match up. One of these teams has potential to break into the playoff talk, but who can handle the pressure? Now, after the week one caveat, let's get into week one on Friday. August 29th, Colorado at Georgia Tech. Does Deion still got it? Or Key and King really want it? Does Deion Sanders still have the magic after bringing this Colorado program back from the dead in seemingly 2 years? Well, the same thing can be said for their week one opponent against Georgia Tech, who also has Brent Key on the rise with a returning cast of characters. The question on everyone's mind is, will Brent Key turn Deion into a pebble, or will Deion show why they are a boulder on a roll? On August 29th, we've got Auburn at Baylor. Is a freeze warning in effect? This game is not only going to feature two potentially fun offenses this upcoming season, but as well as a great litmus test of whether or not Jackson Arnold has what it takes to revive Hugh Freeze's career at Auburn, or will he just end up as more ammunition for the Big 12's argument against Greg Sankey? We'll find out as Baylor looks to make a trend upward this season as a contender in the Big 12 conference title race. Week 1, Saturday, August 30th, Syracuse at Tennessee. The Orange Bowl, Big 10 versus SEC. We've got Orange against Orange, Big 10 against SEC, Brett Bielema against Josh Heupel in this weekend one featured matchup. In this Orange Bowl of sorts, we have two playoff hopefuls who will attempt to make their opponent's path to the playoffs just a little bit more difficult for one another. Both have a grueling conference schedule, and a win in this out-of-conference matchup could tip the scales for a postseason return or debut in the 2026 playoffs. Texas at Ohio State, my game of the week. One of, if not the most anticipated games of the week and maybe the season of the year, comes and answers college football fans' wildest dreams. Two heavyweights clash in this grandiose week one weekend to kick off the year, and two potential playoff teams give us a glimpse of their gumption for greatness within the sport. We enter the era of Arch as Ryan Day tries to make his day and show the Buckeyes are still number one. Alabama at FSU, legacy or tragedy. Both Norvell and DeBoer have something to prove in this week one matchup in Tallahassee. Mike is looking to stop last season's mishap, while DeBoer is trying to reestablish the dominant rip current that is the Crimson Tide. Will someone rise to the occasion, or will one be swept up by the tide as the double red flag is posted in Tallahassee as both coaches attempt to feed their hungry mob of fans? LSU at Clemson, the battle for Death Valley. Both claim the title of Death Valley as their stadium name, but only one can really have that title, right? Can Brian Kelly break his week one losing streak with LSU, or will Dabo Swinney establish Clemson as a contender this year? Well, I guess we're putting up the name of stadium, image of these two coaches, and likeness of their playoff chances to the test in this battle for Death Valley. And last but not least, we've got Notre Dame at Miami, Catholics versus Cristobal. We've got a returning national championship contender and a national championship pretender from last season in this week one matchup of another playoff hopeful. Notre Dame looks to follow the call of their ever-stout and commanding coach Marcus Freeman on the field to take on the Hurricanes. While on the other side of the field, Cristobal and his Canes attempt to blow their competition out of the water with Carson Beck as the eye of the storm. So that was a week one preview for y'all. Hopefully you got a little bit excited. It was a lot of fun for me to do. Let me know in the comments section what game you are most excited for in week one. And we're obviously going to look at all of these a lot more in depth and under review when we get closer to week one and these matchups become more clear in how they're going to shape out with the rankings officially coming out. And we'll see if one of these games or which one will be College Game Day. In my opinion, the two front runners for College Game Day week one is going to be Alabama at FSU or LSU at Clemson. Those are just the two biggest ones, but I would not be shocked if it was Alabama at FSU, since Lee Corso was an alumni from FSU, and it will be his last college game day. It's very sad to say. It's time for him to go. I hate to say that, but he will never be missed, and he will never be forgotten. I definitely will miss Lee Corso. And I'm going to attempt to do more of these previews such as this when we get closer to the season. But please give a like if you enjoyed that and that's something you want to see more coming down the stretch, at least when it comes to the season. So now that we've got that fun little matchup preview for week 1 games, let's go over some news that I'm personally excited about. And our last big topic in today's show is about EA College Football 26, since the trailer just dropped this last Thursday. And for me personally, I grew up playing these games, and we are talking about a great time if you have played these games. EA has had a bad reputation recently with the Madden games, and a lot of eyes came on them when they released EA College Football 25. So first, I want to go over College Football 26, but I do want to get my opinions out about the first one, College Football 25. And I felt 25 was overall a perfect foundation for what they can now build for the future, and we're starting to see how that foundation is being added onto. And one thing I want to state real quick, I did play EA College Football 25, so I do have a, argument in this. I am not a quote-unquote gamer. I was back in my day, but I do enjoy the college football games. For me personally, I still play NCAA 14, not on the 360, but actually on this computer, and it is modded to have updated graphics. It's college football revamped. If you want to look into it and you have a PC and you want to play the original games with updated scorecards and all of that. But outside of that, let's get into this discussion. So in EA College Football 25, I believe that the gameplay was way more dynamic than Madden's, as well as the features that are central to college football's personality were accurately reflected in the game. But I believe there were still some of the same animations taking place within the gameplay, such as Madden, and some small but great features that would be a constant reminder of EA's flaws associated with their Madden franchise. And overall, that just means that, like I said, it was a good foundation, but they didn't have enough fluff into it. I felt like in in NCAA 14, there were a lot of small features and stats that you could look at throughout the season. You had a trophy room, the Heisman race, and all the awards and all the smaller stuff, and even the news headlines that they came up with were a lot more than what EA College Football had. On the tabs, you would have about 5 to 6 news lines or other stories like that. And in EA, they only had 3. But when we get into it, at least the main 2 game modes that EA College Football 25 had to offer and 26 offers is going to get some much needed updates. And the first game mode I'm going to go over is Road to Glory. It is one of the best game modes, at least in the older games. And the outrage from the fans last year seems to at least been answered in some way with new additions to the game. So they have finally added in being able to play high school games, which greatly diminished the realism and fun from the previous game. In the previous game for 25, you just chose how many stars you had and how good you were. And they had a limited amount of what positions you could play. This was not fun at all, because playing in the high school games meant a lot in the older games, because it determined what schools wanted you, and what your overall ratings were going in to the college season. And it was so much fun playing in your state's playoff and seeing if you were able to win a state championship and go on to be something great, or come up short and try to prove something in the college football season. So in this update to Road to Glory, we can see a couple new things with the addition of the high school games being implemented. Though it's not going to be the same as NCAA 14. You're only going to be able to play about 5 high school games, and it's only going to be critical moments, and your stars are going to be reflected on those critical moments, which is sad to hear. I wish you could just play the full season. It'd be more in depth, but we'll see what EA has given us. So right now, the updates are Road to Glory star rankings are back. You can commit and decommit to schools verbally in Road to Glory. At the end of the season, you will be able to have a hat ceremony in Road to Glory, which I'm super excited about. I think that's a very fun thing to have, because in the older games, you really just chose the school and that was about it. And hopefully all these additions are accurately represented in the new game. Like I said, I hope the hat ceremony is actually something fun to do, and there's different things you can do with it. Road to Glory is one of the most fun things I remember playing in NCAA 14, and I really hope that they revive it in this new game mode. Next up is the Dynasty mode, and I will say it had a great and refreshing new look on recruiting that was a mix of, in my opinion, NCAA 13 and 14's recruiting. The computer, though, in the top 25 rankings, a lot of the times was not accurate sometimes, as well as the Heisman race. And that's just my opinion. That's an AI fix and computer fix that is easy. But one of my biggest gripes about Dynasty, though, like I said before, was it felt a little bare. Like I said about NCAA 14, there's so many small things you could just look at throughout the season in the menu. And that game made the game feel more complete and immersive. Now, I do think that this next game will fix a lot of these problems, and some of the new additions to Dynasty mode include cross-platform play in online Dynasty. The expanded portal will be implemented. Formation subs and protected opponents in Dynasty will also be implemented. We finally have the trophy room back and new location-based visits. And some overall new features that we can expect coming into NCAA 26 include over 300 coaches. Yes, they actually have the real coaches now. They had generic ones last time. They have menu features such as marching bands and fight songs being implemented now, so you don't have to hear the same generic drum line every time you're in the menu. I was so annoyed by that every time. I'd want to get immediately into my game mode because it was just the same music the whole time. They now have David Pollock and Desmond Howard in the game as commentators, and there's also updates as they fine-tuned wear and tear. So obviously they're going to release a blog later in the summer about more info, but the release date is currently July 10th. And I think that this game will be better than the last one, but I'm personally not excited. It seems like they went for more cosmetics than actual gameplay fixes, which I didn't like. I felt like there was definitely they needed the day to night transition to happen. That was something big that wasn't in the original game that they're implementing this game. But I really don't want to just see cosmetics be implemented. I really want the game to feel like it has evolved from the previous one. And that's all I have to say. Once I see a gameplay trailer, I might actually just put out a separate video on my channel, not a podcast episode. If y'all would want to see something like that, put a comment down. And even if you want a review of, or at least my review of EA College Football 26. Also, say in the comment section whether you'd want that or not. Now, with all of that out of the way, there's something I got to get off my chest. And it is this Ohio State against Texas game that has just become this whole fiasco when it just hasn't really needed to be. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's Big Noon has taken the Ohio State and Texas game, since it's at Ohio State, and said it's going to be played at noon. Big Noon kickoff is going to host it, so ESPN cannot go up there and make it their college game day. Well, Ohio State was not happy about this. Ohio State has had the majority of their big games be Big Noon kickoff, but you can't be mad at that. I mean, Big Noon is going to choose the best matchup, just like ESPN College Game Day tries to choose the best matchup each week and go to their campus. But I think Ohio State just completely blew this out of the water. I personally enjoy a noon kickoff that's a big game. They obviously don't like it. And Texas had the option to also, say, yeah, we can push it back. But obviously they're going to say no because they're the ones traveling. They want to get back home earlier. Now, I had to get a sip of water because I really have to get this off my chest. Every time Ohio State has a problem, their daddy, Mr. Government, tries to come and fix their problems. So the government tried to make like an amendment and say Big Noon cannot do this. Their feelings were hurt and you can't move it away from prime time to noon. We're going to make a amendment to where you can't do this, and Big Noon is going to quit with this so-called monopoly on what time that they play. Sucks to suck, Ohio State. Your conference has a TV deal with them. You have to suck it up, okay? The SEC, as much as I wish CBS was still with the SEC, we went to ABC. I'm going to suck it up. You have to suck it up with your TV deal. Okay? This daddy government, Ohio's government, came in last year when Michigan beat Ohio State this last season. And the state of Ohio made it illegal to plant a flag in the middle of the field as it's unsportsmanlike. Come on, man. Come on, you won a national championship and you still can't be happy about it. You still can't be happy with where you are in the sport. And let me tell you this, Ohio State fans, the last two national championships that you have, you were not 1 or 2, you were 4 and you were 8. The only reason that you are able to claim 2 national championships is because of this new format. Yes, Alabama definitely prospered from it as well, but we had a lot of teams that were still 1 or 2 going into the playoffs. And it just makes me so mad that Ohio State, every time their feelings get hurt, their government tries to come in and say, oh, baby, don't worry, babe, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix it. Everything's going to be just all right. You sit there, I'm going to deal with the bad man. No. Ohio State is the bad man. They need to quit bullying and trying to be this bully because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Okay? Gosh. That's off my chest. So, this content wraps up this week's College Football Under Review. So, as you listened last week, I did mention that our will they questions would be discussed, but I had to push that to next week as I had so many questions that I came up with, and I wanted to answer all of them or at least narrow some of them down. So I wanted to make sure that that was good and quality content that I look under review. So we might have it next week, but we'll see. Other than that, we're going to keep you updated with other relevant news on our radar for next episode, and hopefully the House versus NCAA settlement case finally comes to a close as we hopefully get more details on the outlook for our upcoming blueprint for a more stable foundation for college football. And since we're kind of in this lull period with college football news, who knows? If nothing really happens and I don't get enough content, I might just give y'all my ideal playoff format and come up with my own format idea and how it would function within the postseason. I love kind of doing stuff like that. And if we were in my utopian world, I'll put it out there and show you what it would look like. But outside of all of that, I'm Nick Watts. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to this episode. And we'll see you next time when we take more college football under review.